I tapped a link and froze. My living room. Online. Live estate sale. Everything must go. They'd priced my father's folded flag case, $5 case only. I am very much alive, and cars are already circling my porch. My phone rings. "Mom, don't make a scene," my daughter says. "We're being proactive. People are on the way." Proactive? With my life? On the counter, a change of address card. I didn't file. A bank alert. I didn't request. Add authorized user. The net is tightening, and it has my name on it. I look at the room I paid for in small, stubborn ways. The lemon yellow sunroom, the robin's egg machine that purrs when it runs. One thing that starts and ends with me. I pick up my purse and my spine. "Shoes on?" I ask my neighbor. "Always," she says. Courthouse. Paperwork. A woman named Teresa who knows where the breaks are. She calls the sheriff. "He'll meet you there." Back on Maple Street, strangers finger my quilt like price tags are permission. A folding table, a card reader, my life cataloged in marker. "We're doing this, Mom," my daughter says. "No," I say. "Posts don't own houses." A patrol car rolls to the curb. A quiet kind of authority steps onto my porch. "Ma'am," he asks me gently, "do you want these folks to leave?" I look past the crowd to the sunroom that glows like a promise. "Yes," I say, "I do." And before anyone moves, I add one sentence that changes everything. The Maple County Courthouse sits like a brick cake on the corner of Main and Elm, with wide stone steps and heavy doors that make you feel like you should have better posture. Inside, a security guard named Ben flicked his chin in greeting. Joellen knows everyone in this town because she volunteers at everything. She explained to him where we were going, without yelling, even though that is her usual volume. At the clerks of courts counter, a woman with reading glasses on a chain and nails painted the color of raspberries looked up and smiled. Her name tag said Teresa. "What can I help you with?" she asked. Her voice made me want to tell the truth more than I wanted to pretend. I told her the whole story in one long piece. I told her I was not ready to move to any place at all except my own kitchen. I told her I had a sunroom, the color of happiness. I told her there were strangers on my sidewalk, and my daughter had told them they could come into my house. When I finished, I realized my hands had stopped shaking without me noticing. Teresa nodded slow, absorbing it all like warm bread absorbs butter. "Okay," she said, "2 things. 1, if someone is selling your property without your consent, that's theft. 2, you can file a no trespass order and have the sheriff serve it. Also call your bank right now about that authorized user mess, and go ahead and call the post office about that change of address. Not everything can be fixed in a day, but a lot can be stopped in an hour if we put our minds to it." Her certainty loosened something in my chest I didn't know was knotted. Teresa slid forms across the counter and walked me through them the way I used to walk my students through cursive. We filled out a trespass affidavit and a request for service. She dialed the sheriff's non-emergency number on her desk phone and spoke like she was ordering lunch. "Yes, Maple Street, the yellow one, with the lemony porch. Homeowner is here with me. Yes, posting is happening. Yes, she'll meet him there." She hung up and handed me a copy of the form inside a plastic sleeve. "Take this," she said. "Put it in your hand and don't let anyone tell you it doesn't mean what it means." The bank put me on hold for exactly 7 bars of a song about canyons before a man named Dylan answered with the soft patience of someone who has heard things like this too many times and the hard edges of someone who is not going to let it happen again. He asked me questions only I could answer. He froze the pending request for an authorized user. He set a flag on my account. He suggested a password phrase that would make Tom laugh. I chose lemon custard and felt a thrill in my stomach I had no business feeling at a bank counter. The woman at the post office answered on the second ring and thanked me for calling so quickly. She put a hold on the fraudulent change of address and promised to alert the carrier. Joellen leaned against the counter and read a flyer about a bake sale like it was a thriller, giving me the space to be the one doing the fixing. Teresa looked through the glass doors at the courthouse lobby and then at me. Her expression, that of someone about to send a kid off to a very important test. She said, "Go home. Our deputy will meet you there. Don't argue on the porch. You answer questions to the uniform and no one else." When Joe and I turned on the Maple Street, I saw a cluster of cars like mushrooms after rain. People had parked close to my curb as if proximity gave them permission. Someone had taped a fluorescent poster to my mailbox with an arrow pointing at my house. In thick marker, "Estate sale today, cash or Venmo, no holds." I could feel my jaw tighten.
On the porch stood Alyssa, in high-waisted jeans and sunglasses, even though it was not that bright, and Chase, my son-in-law, with a card reader plugged into his phone and a roll of masking tape hanging off his wrist like a bracelet. There was a folding table set up by my front door with a cigar box for cash. A woman I didn't know had already lifted a quilt from the stack of blankets folded on my couch and held it to the light like you do at a real sale to check for stains. She had in her other hand a framed picture of a second-grade field day. 20 tiny faces squinting at the camera, mine included in the corner by the orange cones. "We're not doing this," I said, stepping out of Joe's car. My voice sounded even. I didn't feel even, but I sounded it. That counts when you're trying not to be steamrolled in your own story. Alyssa smiled a smile that has gotten her out more parking tickets than she will ever admit. "You came back," she said brightly. "Good. People are here. We just have to start somewhere. It'll feel better once you get used to the idea. Change is healthy." "You didn't ask me," I said. "You don't always know what's good for you," she said. "That's why you have family." Family asks," I said. "Mom," she said, dropping the smile like a mic, "don't do this." "This," I lifted the plastic sleeve with the paperwork Teresa had given me, "is a no trespass order. It has been filed. The sheriff is on the way." Chase laughed without humor. "Sheriff over a garage sale?" "Estate sale," she corrected, still pressing forward. "We have a slot at Sycamore Ridge. You should be packing. We're being proactive before you fall down the stairs and break a hip." "You say that like you care," I said, surprising myself with the bite. "But what I hear is that you want me where you can drop me off and not worry about my porch steps." "Don't be cruel," she said. "We're trying." "I'll try to remember that when my father's flag case is priced at $5. A murmur rose from the folks on the sidewalk, the kind neighbors do when they realize they might be part of a scene and they need to decide whether it's time to pretend to check their phones. A Buckeye sweatshirt couple who looked to be in their 50s hovered on the bottom step with a cardigan. My cardigan, a soft blue one Tommy had brought me from the outlet mall the year I finished chemo. The woman held it like she wasn't sure she should set it down. "Ma'am," she asked, "is this all right? Is the sale on?" "No," I said. I met her eyes because she at least had asked me a question that assumed I was alive and present. "The sale is off. There is no sale." The couple looked at each other like they'd stepped into the wrong movie theater. They put the cardigan on the banister with real care. A patrol car turned the corner. It made a sound that was mostly tires and a little authority. It parked behind Joe's Subaru.
A man in a tan uniform stepped out, hat perfectly aligned, everything squared away. He took one glance and read the room like a teacher reads a classroom and knows who will sit up straight and who will pass notes. His nameplate said Morales. I had seen him at the parade the 4th of July after Tom died. He had handed out lollipops to sweating children under a pop-up tent and said ma'am to everyone he answered. Afternoon, he said to me, with a nod that made me stand a little taller. Mrs. Hart? Yes, I said and handed him the plastic sleeve. He read, fast but thorough. He looked up. This is a no trespass order. Mrs. Hart has asked that no one be on her property without her express permission. If you are not invited by Mrs. Hart, please step off the porch and the driveway. If you remove anything from the property, you are committing theft. The sale is not happening today. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. People obeyed the tone, the words, the rule that had been missing until someone said it out loud. Chase made a sound that might have been a scoff. Alyssa's mouth thinned like a paper cut. She didn't move. Ma'am, Deputy Morales said, turning to me with patience that felt like a rope I could hold on to, do you want these folks to leave? I do, I said. I looked at my daughter and for a breath, I saw her in the glint of a school bus window when she was 9, gap-toothed and fierce, waving at me with a plastic recorder sticking out of her backpack. Then the image blanked and she was a woman in sunglasses using my father's flag as a bargaining chip with strangers on my porch. I want them off my property. He nodded. Everyone not named Mrs. Hart, please step off the porch and the driveway, now. The Buckeye couple went first, the woman touching my arm. I'm sorry, she said, and I believed her. People peeled away in ones and twos. A teenage boy had to be told twice. He was the age that requires repetition. He shuffled toward the sidewalk, hands deep in his hoodie pocket, and I felt weirdly forgiving toward all teenage boys everywhere. Alyssa stayed planted. Mom, she said, quiet with an edge as sharp as a paper cut, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We already promised people. Chase's cousin drove an hour. You're embarrassing us. I'm not responsible for promises you made with my things, and I am not responsible for your embarrassment. You'll regret this when you're alone and you need help, she said, voice rising at the end the way it does when the person hopes the threat will land like a fact. I need respect. Help is useless without it. Joellen, who had been silent longer than I'd have bet she could manage, finally spoke up from my left shoulder. She's been getting up and down those porch steps longer than you've been married, she said to Alyssa, not unkind. She used to carry you up them when you fell asleep in the car after the county fair. Alyssa flinched at that, not at the memory, but at the fact that someone else had it too. She yanked off her sunglasses like they were to blame and took a shaky breath. Let's go, Chase said to her. He said it in the voice of a coach to a player who isn't following the play. He grabbed the roll of tape and the card reader. He strode down the steps like they were mine, but he'd paid for them. At the sidewalk, Alyssa turned. The expression on her face was complicated. Anger, fear, something that looked like she wanted to cry and thought better of it because crying would hand me something she did not want me to have. I don't know what's gotten into you. This is not you. This is exactly me, I said. This is me when I remember. They got into their car. The silver SUV groaned a little as it pulled away. The fluorescent sign peeled off my mailbox with a soft whisper. The teenage boy gave me a look that said he respected me more than he had expected to when his mother made him get in the car. A cardinal landed on the top rung of my porch swing and cocked his head at me like it wanted to be in the minutes. Deputy Morales handed me a business card. If anyone returns uninvited, call this number, he said. Also, you might want to contact legal aid at the community center. They'll help you draft a letter telling folks not to list or sell your property online without permission. Thank you, I said. It wasn't just for the card. It was for the posture he carried on my porch that bent the air in my favor. When the patrol car turned the corner, the street felt bigger than it had in years. The quiet didn't ask me to apologize for it. I unlocked my front door. Joellen followed me into the kitchen like she belonged there. I pulled down 2 mugs, made a fresh pot of coffee, and didn't care what she thought about the strength. We stood by the sink with our hands around the heat like kids who had survived a dare. She said, "You did good." I said, "I didn't shake," surprised at how proud that made me. "Not after a while." She said, "If you start to, lean on me. That's the deal around here." That night, after I washed the dishes with the lemon-scented soap and listened to the fridge hum like a lullaby, I called legal aid. The number rang, and a man named Marcus answered with a voice that made me picture cardigans and sturdy shoes. He let me tell the story again without interrupting, the way I used to let my students sound out a word to the last syllable without jumping in. "Mrs. Hart," he said when I finished, "what you describe is financial and emotional abuse. Folks don't like those words when we apply them to family, but that's what it is. You can send a formal notice prohibiting anyone from listing, selling, or removing your property without your written permission. You could instruct them not to contact your bank or change your address. If they violate it, we document and go from there. Sometimes a letter on letterhead works better than sons and daughters-in-law." "What if they say they're just helping?" I asked. "We all say we're helping when we want something," he said. "The question is, who benefits?" He drafted the letter with me over the phone while I sat at the kitchen table looking at the lace curtain my grandmother had tatted by hand. He emailed it to me while we were still on the call. I printed it as if the printer had just started to matter. The sound of the paper sliding into the tray felt like a line drawn in chalk across my front walk. The next morning, I carried the letter to the post office. The clerk's name was Stacy, a woman with a braid so tight it could have kept the roof on in a windstorm. She weighed my envelopes like they were something she wanted to see safely across town. She stamped the certified mail green card with a solid thunk that felt like a door somewhere had locked on purpose. For a while, the phone rang as if it had nothing better to do. Alyssa tried charm, then guilt, then fury folded into concern as if she were bringing me soup I didn't want. Chase texted me vocabulary words like rational and make this easy. I answered once, typing slow because I wanted to be careful. I wrote, "I love you. I am safe. I will not discuss moving with you. Do not list or remove my property. My boundaries are non-negotiable." Then I silenced their numbers because peace is a muscle that needs protection while it grows old enough to defend itself. A few days later, a woman from Adult Protective Services knocked on my door and said my daughter had requested a wellness check. I invited her in and offered coffee because that is how I was raised. We sat at the kitchen table, and the APS lady, whose name was Kelly and who wore a sweater with tiny embroidered sunflowers, asked me questions in a voice that made me think of good nurses at bad moments. "Do you feel safe?" "Yes." "Do you have food and transportation?" "Yes." "Do you take your medication?" "Yes." "Do you know your doctor's name and when you last saw her?" "Yes." She walked around once, glanced at the grab bars I'd had installed in the shower, more for convenience than emergency, and complimented the lemon paint without sounding patronizing. "My daughter is worried," I said, because I wanted to be fair even when I wanted to be furious. "But worried has looked like control lately." Kelly nodded. "It happens more than you'd think." She said, "I'll note you're independent, oriented, and your house is safer than most of the people who call me for themselves. If anyone gives you trouble, call me." 2 weeks passed in small accomplishments. I learned how to use the grocery store's curbside pickup on days my knee ached, and the idea of walking the length of the store made my bones pre-tired. I found a handyman on the community board at the library who put in 2 extra railings on my porch steps, not because I can't manage them, but because I like the security of it. I bought a mat for the laundry room that says "wipe your paws," even though there is no dog in this house. Joellen insists I'll change my mind on that before Christmas. At the library, I saw a flyer for a Tuesday quilting circle. I went with a tin of cookies from the bakery and a hope that I wasn't too old for new people. The women there, 2 grandmothers with matching silver bob haircuts, a young mother who makes kids' costumes for a living out of her garage, a retired nurse who can thread a needle faster than anyone I've ever seen, welcomed me like I brought something other than cookies. They asked about my sunroom and didn't change the subject when I lit up describing it. The second week, the retired nurse, Elaine, brought me a pattern she said looked like sunshine over water. I almost cried because that is exactly what I would have called it if I had thought to. Sometimes at night, after a show that makes me feel like the world can still be funny, I lie down and I am not immediately alone. The quiet in my house is not empty. It is full of my breath and the ticking of the kitchen clock and the memory of children's voices. It is full of the sound of Tom putting down a cup on a coaster that his mother made. I don't mind the quiet. I mind the kind of noise that insists you're wrong about your own life. 3 months after the non-sale, Alyssa called from an unknown number. Caller ID showed a local clinic where she takes the kids for pediatric appointments. I answered because I thought it might be relevant to little people who did not ask to be in the middle of whatever this mess is. It wasn't the clinic. It was her. She had borrowed their phone to get past my silence. "Mom," she said, and the word caught on a burr. "Can we talk? Not about moving, about lunch. I can drive to you. We can meet somewhere public so you won't feel ambushed." I took a breath. Sometimes the thing you want to protect is the thing that needs to sit at a diner table and look across at someone who used to bring you dandelion bouquets for your purse. We can meet at Red Wagon Diner, 2 o'clock. I have quilting at 4. Red Wagon is one of those places that feels like it exists in every town, even if it doesn't. The waitress calls you hun without an asterisk on the kindness. The coffee is decent. The pie looks better than it tastes. The booths have that red vinyl that sticks to your thighs in August if you wear shorts. I got there early and slid into a booth by the window that faces the high school. I watched 2 teenagers hold hands like they were doing something new that was also very old. Alyssa came in wearing a blazer, like this was a parent-teacher conference. She sat across from me with a breath that shook without making a sound. For a few minutes, we talked about rain and middle school sports and how the gas prices had made everyone who shops at Costco insufferable about the savings. Then the waitress came, and Alyssa ordered a salad with no croutons, and I ordered a tuna melt because the part of me that wants to stay alive believes in tuna melts. "I shouldn't have posted your house," she said, words stiff, like they'd been ironed. "I shouldn't have made that decision without you." "That's true," I said. I didn't add, "thank you," because accepting an apology is not the same as thanking someone for behavior that hurt you. She panicked, she said. "Chase said we were being proactive. He said your knee makes stairs dangerous. He said assisted living is normal. He said we could use your house money to—" She stopped. She didn't finish with "to put down a payment on our dream place in the newer subdivision," but I heard it anyway. I watched the thought rise from the water and swim just below the surface. "Do you remember the year I got sick? You were 22. She made a face at the air, like the word itself was bitter. "Of course." I said, "You used to drive me to chemo on Thursdays. When I would say, 'We can do this,' what did you say?" She frowned at the table. I'd say, "We're doing it." And when I would say, "I'm scared," what did you say? I'd say, "Me too, but I'm here." Do you know what you didn't say? I paused to make room for the memory to be as big as it needed to be. You didn't say, "You don't know what's good for you." She blinked. I saw the girl who had held my hand with chipped nail polish. Then she was the woman again, quiet, calculating a thing she wanted to say and a thing she knew better not to say out loud. "I worry," she said, small. "I worry about you." Worry calls for gentleness. What you did felt like control wearing worry as a costume. The costume didn't fit. The waitress brought the food. The tuna melt was the temperature of the sun. I burned my tongue on principle. Alyssa poked at her salad like it had failed to live up to the promotion. We had a hard year. Chase got his hours cut. We overextended ourselves on the house. My student loan finally came out of deferment. Mom, I am tired of doing everything hard. I thought, she headed her head, I thought there was a way to make something easier for you and for me. I thought maybe the universe had handed us a solution. You are my daughter, I said. You may tell me you're tired. You may ask me for help, but you may not sell my life to make yours lighter. Her chin went up the way mine does. It was like seeing myself from a distance and wanting to both hug and to argue. She swallowed. Can I come to your house next week? Not to pack, to visit with the kids. We'll bring groceries. We'll bring our own toilet paper if that makes it easier. I don't want to be a stranger to your lemon yellow room. I don't want you to be a stranger to your grandchildren because I did something stupid. There are rules. You call before you come. You bring something if you're going to eat. You leave before anyone needs a nap they're not going to take in my living room. You don't rearrange anything. You don't open drawers. If we're glittering, we glitter at your house. She almost smiled. Glitter is a kitchen plague. It is. And it only belongs to the mother of small children, not a grandmother who will be vacuuming it out of her rugs in 2030. We settled into the new shape of the room the way you ease into a pair of jeans that belonged to your sister in high school. We ate. We talked about the way the light hits at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in late fall. She told me an embarrassing story about her neighbor's dog and a Halloween scarecrow. I told her that Joe Allen is a menace in the best way. When we parted in the parking lot, she hugged me too long, then too short, both at once somehow.
That night, I slept like someone had exhaled the house for me, so I didn't have to use up my own air. The next week, there was a knock on my front door that sounded like someone trying to keep from sounding like they were knocking. I opened it to find a man in a button-down shirt and a too bright smile holding a clipboard. Behind him, a van idled with the logo on the side that made me squint. He said he was from Heritage Liquidators and had a contract. He claimed my family had scheduled a follow-up sale for that morning. You're about 3 months late, and you're at the wrong house, I said, not unkind. I asked to see the contract. He lifted his clipboard in a way that suggested I wasn't supposed to ask for details. When I took the papers, I recognized Alyssa's handwriting. She is signed with a heart over the I in her last name. My stomach did a small, tight thing, but I didn't feed the panic. I call it Deputy Morales. He arrived with the same hat and the same steadiness. He read the contract and handed it back to the liquidator with 2 fingers, the way you handle something sticky. This contract isn't binding without the homeowner's signature, and it doesn't have it. This is a civil matter you can't solve with a clipboard. You're going to want to go before this turns into a disorderly conduct call. The man left with his glossy van and his tail between his tires. I sent Alyssa a picture of the contract with one line. You owe someone an apology that isn't me. She replied with a single word. Done. Small things done right can feel like monuments. By late fall, the maples along my street had let go of their leaves like they had finally decided to trust gravity. The air got that crisp taste I crave all August when I think I won't make it through another hot spell. I took to walking to the community center on Tuesdays to meet Marcus and other folks at a workshop he runs called Protect Yourself, Scams, Schemes, and Family Pressure. It is a terrible title that Elaine and I agreed to fix once we learned his budget doesn't allow for graphic design or common sense. The room fills with stories. There's always someone who thought a grandson needed gift cards right away, someone whose nephew promised to fix a roof and disappeared,
Someone whose son said the words durable power of attorney like they were delivery pizza. Marcus asked me to speak one week. I demurred with fake modesty and then did it with real fear. I told the story calmly, like I was reading steps on a recipe card. I said, change of address card out loud. I said, authorized user out loud. I said, estate sale while alive out loud. And a sound rippled through the room like an organ note. When I finished, a woman in a navy cardigan with hot pink glasses wiped her eyes and said, I didn't know we could say no to our children. I said you absolutely can, and sometimes you have to. And I went home and slept the sleep of someone who had finally told the story to the right people. I started something else by accident. On Saturdays, I open my porch gate, and the neighborhood girls show up with jeans that need hemming and backpacks full of patches. They sit on my sunroom floor with their legs folded crisscross applesauce like they learned in kindergarten and argue about whether to put the tiger patch on the back pocket or the knee. Their moms bring coffee and gossip. Jo Ellen brings slice and bake cookies, which the girls pretend not to notice and then devour when their mothers stand up to take a phone call. I teach them to thread a needle without swearing. I teach them to pin before running the stitch. I teach them that you can undo seams and it is not the end of the world. It's just an hour to do over. One afternoon, Alyssa texted, may we come today? The kids want to show you their Halloween costumes. We can bring pizza. I looked at my schedule. I looked at my patience. I said yes, with time limits. They came with 2 pizzas, paper plates, and napkins that matched nothing. The kids jumped on the porch like they were the mayor. The older one, the one that will always be a little like me in the way she wants things her own way, spun in her witch dress until she fell down. The little one held her pirate sword like she meant it. There was one stray glitter flake at the end of the night, and I pretended not to see it because I am capable of compromise if it sticks to a sock and leaves with them. We sat on the porch swing and watched the kids chase the neighbor's cat. Jen leaned her head back against the wood and closed her eyes for a second. It is a particular intimacy to be exhausted on someone else's furniture. She said, I looked up the lemon paint color. It suits you. I know, I said. Mom, she said, eyes open now, looking at the hill where 2 boys were trying to see who could roll fastest. Chase and I are in counseling. He says I like to drive even when I don't know how, that I take your keys and call it kindness. I hope they are good keys with the keychain that won't bite him when you toss them. He might need to learn to catch, she said, smiling a real smile this time. And I might need to learn to ask, not assume. Brains get tired when we're scared. Mine does too. She swallowed. I did the Heritage Liquidator's apology. He told me he had never had someone's mother stand up to a sale like that. He said, usually the kids steamroll. I said, my mother taught 3rd graders for 30 years. She knows what a steamroll looks like. I laughed then, a small sound that shook loose something I had not laughed at in years. The kids yelled that they were starving, even though they had eaten pizza exactly 20 minutes before. Alyssa stood up, hands on her knees like a person bracing for the work of being kind. Next Friday, the school is hosting a grandparents' lunch. You don't have to come, you can say no, but I would like you to be there, and I will carry the tray. I can carry a tray, I said. Yes, you can. I want to carry mine next to yours. Winter came like a slow draw. The first frost took the overnight tomatoes. I brought in my porch plants and put them in the sunroom where they either thrived like new converts or crumpled like old believers. I spread a quilt across the back of the porch swing that I'd made with Elaine's sunshine over water pattern. Across the center, I stitched a patch that read Freedom in black thread. If you stood on the street and looked toward the house in the right light, you could see it. Sometimes I saw cars slow down, eyes catching on the letters, and I felt sorry for anyone who lived a life where the word freedom didn't surprise them still.
In January, a storm knocked out power for a night. The whole street went dark like someone had drawn a curtain. I lit the candles I keep in a basket by the stove. I pulled the gas fireplace starter. It whooshed alive and the living room glowed like a photograph of itself. Joellen knocked on the back door with a bowl of chili that had enough spice to make your ears ring and enough heat to make your hands warm just holding the bowl. We sat on the floor and ate by candlelight and laughed at how romantic we were without meaning to be. Alyssa texted, "Are you okay? Do you need us to come get you?" I replied, "I'm with Joe. Soup? Fire? Candles? I am fine." She wrote back, "Good." Then a minute later, "I love you." I wrote, "Me too." In March, I taught a boy from up the block to sew his scalp patches on his sash because his father worked nights and his mother had a trimmer in her hands that made thread jump its path. He was 9 and looked at me like I had given him a superpower. In April, the Quilting Circle organized a show at the community center. We hung our quilts from ropes strung across the basketball court. People came with paper cups of lemonade and stood under color like they were getting baptized in fabric. Marcus and his crew set up a table in the corner with leaflets about scams. They put me next to them with a sign that said, "Ask Ellie how to tell your adult children no." I made fun of the sign and then answered questions for 2 hours and went home with a full heart and the good kind of tired. One afternoon in May, I got a letter from Sycamore Ridge, the assisted living place Alyssa had mentioned months ago. It was a glossy fold-out with pictures of people in matching cardigans and a jigsaw puzzle on a table. On the back, someone had circled a phone number with a heart over the I in Sycamore. They'd included a note, "We'd love to give you a tour." I wrote back, "I have a sunroom. You are welcome to come see mine." In the thick of summer, we hosted a neighborhood yard sale because the cul-de-sac needed to clear its garages and because everyone likes to pretend they are good at pricing their own things. I put out a few items with real prices: 3 vases I never use, a set of plates that were too formal for a life I never wanted again, and a box of yard sale knickknacks that multiply in the dark. The young mother from quilting brought honey from her cousin's hives. The retired nurse sold a treadmill that every woman over 65 came to test like a relic. Kids wove through the tables like they were on an obstacle course. Alyssa set up a table of kids' books and priced each one at $0.25. For the first hour, I held my breath without meaning to. When a woman admired a quilt on the back of my chair and asked, "Is that for sale?" Alyssa said before I could answer, "Nothing with thread leaves this yard unless my mother says so." The woman laughed. "Someone taught you, right?" she said. Late in the day, when the air warmed past stamina and the shade moved across my yard like a giant hand, I sat with Joellen and watched life do its small things show. The girls from sewing class came to say hi and borrowed my bathroom and returned with questions about boyfriends and volleyball tryouts. The Buckeye couple from the almost sale walked by holding iced coffees and waving like we were part of their story too now. Deputy Morales drove by and honked once. I waved at him like a woman does at a person who was there the day she remembered which way is up. That night, I took a needle and thread into the sunroom and mended a small tear that had appeared at the corner of a cushion. Not everything can be fixed. Some things need to be left alone to teach you what you can live with. But a lot can be stitched through if you have good light and patience, and I have both now in decent supply. When I crawled into bed, I thought about the questions I get at the community center. A woman in pink glasses always asks, "How did you finally decide?" I say, it wasn't a decision so much as a remembering. I remembered I live here. I remembered that being needed is not the same as being loved. I remembered that no is a complete sentence. A man with a cap that says Vietnam once said, "But what if you're wrong?" I said, "Then I'll be wrong in my own house and I'll fix it from there." Sometimes for a moment, I think about the day Alyssa posted my living room online. I think about the glossy photo of a flag case priced like a trinket. I think about how the world stopped exactly long enough for me to stand up. The stopping was not a bad thing. It was a breath held. It was a pause in a song, so you notice what's underneath. Drums, bass, the pulse that keeps you. On the first weekend of fall again, I hung the Freedom quilt across the porch swing. The light hit it at an angle that turned the black letters into something bluer. I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with a chip in the handle that keeps my thumb anchored. I stepped outside and breathed. A cardinal sang from the fence like it was claiming territorial rights to my mornings. Somewhere up the street, a screen door slammed and a child called for their dog. My knee hummed a small complaint, nothing I couldn't make peace with. I am very much alive. I am very much here. My sunroom glows like a promise that kept itself. My life fits again. The quiet in this house belongs to me. The loud parts do too. When a neighbor asked me the other day whether I ever thought I would end up living alone at my age, I laughed and said, alone is the wrong word for a life you chose. I am not alone. I have Joellen, who makes a chicken pot pie that could raise the dead and who always keeps her sneakers by the door. I have Elaine and the quilting girls who sew their confidence into crooked seams. I have Marcus, who prints forms as if they are shields and trains people to hold them up. I have Deputy Morales, whose steady voice moved strangers off my porch without anyone having to raise a hand. I have the memory of Tom's laugh. I have the splash of my own coffee into my own mug at 6 a.m. when the light in the sunroom makes the dust look like glitter, and I forgive glitter, even if it sneaks in on kids' socks. Alyssa and I are not a fairy tale. We text. We mess up. She still has moments when she thinks I should do things her way. I still have moments when I want to stand on my porch and shout that I have earned the right to choose my own laundry detergent. But the last time she brought the kids, she walked in with a bag that clinked. It was a set of lemon-patterned teacups from a thrift store. She set them on my table like an apology you can drink from. She said, I saw them and thought of your sunroom. I asked the lady to wrap them twice. We drank tea from those cups like forgiveness was a hot drink you share slowly on a Saturday afternoon while the kids learned to stitch a straight line on a cloth napkin Sabrina from 2 houses down had brought over because she wants to make fancy dinners feel fancy for her 3-year-old. When everyone left, I washed the cups and put them on the lemon yellow shelf. I turned off the light. In the reflected glass, my face looked like my mother's in a way that warmed and didn't frighten me. I turned the lock on my front door with a small click that felt like punctuation instead of prison. People ask what the moral is, like life is kindergarten. I say it's not a bumper sticker. It's a practice. It's a list of small sentences you say at the right time to the right people. This is my house. That is my quilt. You cannot sell my life. Help does not sound like orders. Being needed does not equal being loved. No is the truth you say before you are kind. I don't tell them about the lemon paint unless they ask. When they do, I tell them the name, like a punchline. Lemon custard. They laugh because it is ridiculous and perfect. Then they go to Patton's and buy a gallon for themselves. They go home and paint a porch. They call their adult kids and say, we're trying something new. If I could speak to the woman I was a year ago, I would tell her one thing very softly so she could hear it before she dismissed it. I would say, you are allowed to have a room that glows. You are allowed to lock your door. You are allowed to answer the phone with love and an absolute line. You are allowed to be exactly as alive as you are. I think I already told her. She must have been listening.